Well, I did it. It's a new guitar day here on the channel, and the guitar that I'll be revealing to you today is the Lazarus Epiphone 59 Les Paul Special Edition for Joe Bonamassa. And here it is. I hope that the camera can capture the flamed maple top or veneer that is on this guitar, which is the first thing that catches your eye. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory on this guitar, and then I'll jump into some playing and some just overall impressions of the guitar at this timestamp, whatever this is. So, a while back, I stumbled onto Joe Bonamassa. I knew who he was, but just by the name. I heard his playing, I was like, wow, this is amazing, actually. And then I saw some interviews with him and his love for guitars, and it was just inspiring. So I was instantly a Bonamassa fan. One of my favorite videos is Eric Gales and Joe Bonamassa on the Blues Cruise. It's like a guitar duel over the Ballad of John Henry. That's a great video. If you don't know who Bonamassa is, check that video out. It'll send you down a Bonamassa and an Eric Gales rabbit hole. So getting into Bonamassa, obviously, he's a big Les Paul player, so it made me want a Les Paul. And also Les Pauls have just a cool like vintage blues vibe to them. I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. But I was like, I can't just go buy things on whims. So didn't do anything, put it off. And then it comes up like once a month where I'm like, oh God. And I come like this close to pulling the trigger. But I don't. Because I want to play a guitar and I want it to feel really good. When I buy it, I don't just want to pull the trigger online to some random guitar and then hope that it feels good. Like, that's a risky move. So, could pay off, but also you could end up with a terrible guitar and have to return it or whatever. So I was like, well, whenever I get around to it, I'll run into a guitar store and play some Epiphones first, because Gibsons are so expensive, it's crazy. And then I would say, I didn't get around to it, I kept pushing it off because I knew if I started playing them, I'd fuel the fire. So every time it comes up, I would just shelve it. But then I would say about 2 months ago, I was in a Guitar Center and I picked up a 50s or a 60s, I don't even remember, Epiphone Les Paul. So a little bit above their baseline model. And it was so disappointing because like I wanted to like it, but I was just like, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good in my hands. It just felt weird and unnatural. And then it didn't sound great either. So it was just a lose-lose there. Kind of good because I was like, oh, then I'm definitely not getting it because Gibsons are so expensive. And then I tried that again later with the regular Epiphone, like I forget what it's called, the Studio or something. And that was the same. I just didn't like it that much. But at that time also, they had a McCarty S2, McCarty 594, which is a PRS guitar. S2 at a Guitar Center I was at, was used. I picked it up, I was like, ooh, this feels really good. Maybe this is on my mind as well. Maybe I'll get this instead of a Les Paul when I do. I'm thinking, all right, maybe, because that's expensive too. That's as expensive as the baseline Gibson, I think, or actually a little bit less. I was like, maybe if I just pool up my money, I can buy myself a Christmas present. I don't know. So a lot was going through my head. I was like, maybe I just save up for the Gibson. I'd have to play one first just to make sure. I want to play it and make sure it's actually good. And it's not that I just don't like Les Pauls, So what I did was, again, I just shelved it. I was like, S2, the Les Paul, whatever. I got my Strat. I love my Strat. And then this guitar came in, the SG, came back around into my life. So that kind of kept my attention for a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I like that guitar. It's just okay, cool, a guitar. ES335, great sounding guitar, but the feel is just okay. Whereas my Strat, I'm in love with it. The feel's great, the sound's great. Everything about that guitar I love. So, cut to making the video for that SG guitar, rolling the edges. I walked into a Guitar Center to get the strings, and they had just restocked, this was only like a week ago. Whenever, I don't remember. Oh, probably a week ago. I walked into the Guitar Center. They had just restocked. There was a bunch of guitars on the wall. I was like, oh, that's cool. Well, I'll come back in when they're not closing and check some out. And then I saw up in the corner, I saw a really cool looking Les Paul. And I'm thinking, because it's on the top shelf, it's a Gibson. So I was like, oh, that's cool, whatever. I come in the next day because I just want to play around. And I was like, hey, I want to try out, see what a Gibson Les Paul feels like. So while I'm here, that's what I'll do. I come in, I see this guitar. They have this and another one, like, I don't even know what the one like it was, next to it was, but it was similar. And it was hanging, and I was like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. The burst finish, which is confusing for those of you that don't know, the burst finish doesn't actually look like a burst because the dies that they would use in the late 50s, early 60s, like the 58, 59, 60, would have this color as a base, and then they'd have this red as the burst. But that dye that they used for the red burst was like UV sensitive. It would react to UV rays, which is the sun, and it would just end up fading to look like all this. There was no real burst, but they're called bursts, the 59s. And this is a 59 copy. So I picked up, I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. And then it was an Epiphone. I was like, that's weird. Also very expensive for an Epiphone. I've never seen an Epiphone that expensive. So immediately when I put up my hands, I was like, oh, this is very different. Smooth edges, kind of a fat neck, but it's perfectly round. It fits very nicely in my hand. And the fretboard doesn't feel too wide. Now, I don't know whether that's... Well, I'll get into it. I'll get into more about the neck in the review, but it just felt great. So like, oh... At that moment, I was like, good and bad feeling. Like, bad because I know that now I'm going to want to buy it. Or buy the fuel to get a Les Paul is going to be reignited. But good because I'm like, this feels great. So... felt great in my hands. Then I plugged it in, and oddly enough, they had this amp at the Guitar Center. So I plugged it right into the amp that I would have, and immediately I was like, oh my God, because the sound was great too, because of the pickups in this guitar, I think. Well, again, we'll get into it in the review, but it sounded amazing, and I was like, okay, well, now this could be one of two things. This could just be, this type of Epiphone is great. Or it could be, I have a good Epiphone model, because every guitar in the line is different as well. And I mean, obviously this probably feels just like all the other ones, but also it could be one that just sits well with me. I like the sound of it and I like the feel of it. Then I look at the tag after I've played it for a while and I'm like, already want to buy it, and I see it says Joe Bonamassa Special Edition. Which, two things. One, full circle, because Bonamassa is the one that made me want to get a Les Paul in the first place. And two, I see Special Edition, and I know Bonamassa releases a different guitar every year. So I'm like, I don't know how long these are going to be in production for. There's one here. Like, oh, it feels so good. So it could be just this guitar itself, not the line of guitars, but this guitar feels good. I know it's going to be somewhat limited. So even if for some reason I hate it later, it's going to hold its value, I'm thinking. And I'm like, I just had to buy it. So here we are. Now let's get into some reviews. That was a long story, I think. So initial impressions, I'll do a detailed review. Give me a week or two, and I'll put out a detailed review of this guitar after I've had a while to play. But I'm just going to tell you my first impressions. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. That will be for the other video. So if you want to see that other video, subscribe to my channel because it will be out very soon. But first impressions, just the things that stand out. I'm not going to cover everything, like I said. Things that stand out to me. The feel of this neck, great. It's the 50s shape, so it's pretty round and it's pretty thick. But also, I don't know if that makes the fretboard feel smaller or if the fretboard just isn't as wide, but it fits perfectly in my hand, and the fretboard doesn't feel like it's digging in here or here. It feels amazing. Acoustically, sounds great. Sounds pretty resonant. It's not like the SG is actually the most resonant guitar I've ever played, so that's more, but this is very resonant. Now let's get a tone. I feel like that's what people have been waiting for, and we'll dive into what the tones are like. Now I have this set to what I think is a fun way to set this. No pedals, just straight into the amp. Real Joe Bonamassa like. Actually, I have a delay on, but no overdrives. Right off the bat, a lot of dynamics. That could just be the action, but it's not that high. But I can play very softly. I think it's just a Les Paul thing. I can play very softly. That's the tone on 7. Again, I'll cover all the tones in the later review, but just neck. Middle. Bridge. So sustain's great, feels great, the tone's great. Because what I came to find, I was like, why does the Epiphone sound so good? I didn't know. Apparently it's also the case with just the regular 59, not just the Lazarus edition, but these pickups are burst buckers. They're Gibson pickups and the CTS pots. So it's more Gibson-y than Epiphone when it comes to the electronics, which is why it sounds great. What also stood out to me was the headstock. I'll throw up some pictures right now, but show you right here. The headstock compared to my ES335 is amazing. I hate the headstock on that 335. It's still my least favorite part about that guitar. But this, I like better than a Gibson headstock. It's sick. I like the shape of it better than the Gibson headstock, and the pearl inlay of the word Epiphone looks better than the word Gibson does, I think. So the thing I don't like about Epiphone is now the thing I do like about Epiphone. Also the back of the neck. It is finished, obviously, but it's a nice satin feel. But the back of the neck is very interesting, right? It's not glossy, I don't think. Doesn't feel too glossy to me. So I would say not glossy. Also not completely satin and smooth though. It's like a nice blend. I think you'd call this satin finish or aged gloss maybe. I think that actually is what it's called, aged gloss. So it's nice. It's not satin and smooth because I do like the gloss. I'm just used to it with the Strat, with this. So my hand can stick when I want it to. But if I want to slide, it's not like I'm like shot like I have to pick up my hand off the neck. It's a really nice combo, which I also feel with the Strat because it literally is aged gloss or aged nitro. That goes to the finish as well with this. I think it doesn't really look terribly aged. It looks like kind of a mix between satin and gloss, which I just think looks sick. I think it looks really good, and I think it'll age well as well. Yeah, those are really my first impressions. I think it sounds amazing. It plays very well. I mean, come on, how good does that sound? I set the amp 2 to this. My amp settings real quick. Treble 8, bass 4 1/4, middle little over 6, presence little over 6, drive at 7.5. And I think this thing sounds great. So look out for my full review of this guitar, which will be coming soon. I'm gonna probably restring it. If I do restring it, I'm thinking about top wrapping the tailpiece just because Bonamassa does it. But also this tailpiece is all the way screwed down. And I'm not touching the bridge. So I might be fine. I might tighten the truss rod just a little bit. Just a little bit. I don't know. Again, don't know what I'm gonna do, but you will get a review. So, oh, and I'm gonna adjust my pickups because one pickup right now is hotter than the other one with volume, so the bridge pickup needs to be lowered a touch. So I'm gonna do that as well. There's not that many reviews out of this right now, so if you did like this, subscribe to the channel for more. Thumbs up the video, comment any questions you have about the guitar. Thanks, I'm out.